Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar Unified Modeling with ICEM Surf. All right then, my name is Honorata Frings and I will moderate this webinar today for you, and Nick McFerrin will give you an overview about the unified modeling functions in ICEM Surf. He's one of our best specialists and we have a couple more to answer your questions after the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and you can re-watch it on our CATIA Creative Design community or is a webinar on demand on 3ds.com or direct link to GoToWebinar that you will receive tomorrow. At the end of this webinar, as I said, you can ask questions and we will have some information on future webinars and events for you. If you have any questions in between, please raise a hand or write it into the question window. And now I hand over to Nick. Have fun with the webinar.
Thank you, Honorata. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this overview of unified modeling in ICEM Surf. The webinar is going to take about an hour. I may slip over a little bit, depends how it goes. So I've got a lot to get through, so I'm just going to go straight through it. So what is unified modeling? It's a specific working environment, that's how we describe it, inside ICEM Surf. It sits inside the classic working environment we all know and love. It allows you to combine many different types of operations and many different types of geometry to work either individually or globally at the same time. It's a very powerful tool. For licensing, classic unified modeling is it's not licensed, so depending on the licenses that you have, the functions will grow. So typically you get it included with ICEM Surf Professional K24, and today I'm going to be using some extra licenses, Magic Master and Scan modeling to get the most out of it. So in the bottom right hand corner of ICEM Surf you will see the button. I'm sure you've seen it before, I'm sure you've had a play. It's been there for quite some time. When you click on it, you get this dialog box here with 3 family rows and some extra functions underneath. So taking a look at this on screen, you can see geometry, reference, and proj base. Okay, and then beneath that you have the command palette. So we have the unified modification palette, some global modeling functions, and a volume modeling function, and move. And below that we have some other things as well, which I'll come to shortly. So, yeah, below, here we go. So that's what I was going to say. We have the first thing that makes it very different from classic ICEM Surf. As we all know, you just have the one undo, but with unified modeling, you have up to 30. Okay, so this is what you see at the bottom of the unified modeling dialog box. If you push the drop down, you'll see another row, a few things, session and variants. I'll come back to that a bit later on, but this allows you to organize your unified modeling sessions a little bit better. So let's take a look at the geometry family first. So I'm going to hop into ICEM Surf in and out once or twice as we go through the slides. I'm keeping a track here to make sure I don't miss anything. So where is my ICEM? There we go. All right. Oops, that's not it, sorry. There, finally. All right, so this is live ICEM Surf, a live presentation, as you can already tell, I'm sure. All right, so here's the unified modeling button, and we've seen it before. ICEM already asks you straight away for your geometry selection. So let's just take a look at geometry first. So I'm going to pick everything here. Okay, so you can see we've got a mixture of things. We have some scan, we have raw data, we have curves, and we have faces and patches. If I go into the modification palette, you can see I've got these different modification tools. Some of them you'll be familiar with from classic ICEM Surf, a single control point row, normal, tangent, and so on. But we have some extra ones as well. I'm just going to refer to my XYZ coordinates and just lock down X and Y so I can start making some changes. Taking a look here, you'll see that each family row has got a display icon just for itself. So if I click on here, I can switch on my surface control points. We can also control the colors independently. So what I can do is, using just a single control point, let's just change my law. There we go. So I can pick on a control point here or here. I can pick on a curve control point, a raw data, or even scan. Okay. So I've made a bit of a mess here, so let's just go back a little with the undos. There we go, and forwards again. So it's very handy to be able to do all these different undos time and again. So you saw me pick all the geometry like that. What we can do is, if you may need to make changes, it's very straightforward. I'm just going to delete this curve right here. Okay, the curve is gone. Now, at any time in unified modeling, you can add in extra geometry at will. So what I want to do here is I'm going to create some geometry. Now, we have these commands for creating geometry on this palette, but I can also use a context menu. So if I right-click on the background, I have access to classic ICEM Surf functions. So I can choose curve and then blend. And then I can use my classic blend command to create a curve here. Now all I need to do is hit the plus, and then I can include it in my geometry set. Very easy. Okay, so this is how we get geometry into unified modeling. Let's take a look at some of the modeling functions that we have here. So I've got a simple curve and a patch. Let's take a look at these. So I'm going to go into my control point modification here. Let's take a look at these commands. So that's vector, tangent, and normal. So here's something new. With, excuse me, in classic ICEM Surf, you don't have normal modification for curves. In we do. So what happens here is the direction is defined by projecting the control point onto the curve and taking that normal direction. Tangent also works in a way you're familiar with, going down the tangent lines, like so. But we also have access to an extra function, which is a local tangent. This allows me to slide the control point, oops, there we go, up and down the local tangent. Okay. The same thing applies for patches. So I can move the control point down these lines here. You can see the preview line in red helping me know what I'm going to be moving. And again, whoops. There we go. To access command, this special local tangent, you just hold down the T key, T for tangent. Okay, moving on. So we talked a little bit about a context menu before. So here we have a face. So if I activate the face for my geometry, how do I make changes to this? Well, in classic ICEM Surf, of course, you can't. You can face it again or trim it perhaps, but there's not an awful lot you can do with it. So in we have a special function. So if I go into modification, I can right click on the face and we get a context sensitive menu. The one that I want to look at here is base patch. This is the patch from which the face was made. In unified modeling, we can directly modify this base patch and the face will update accordingly. Brilliant. We can also change the order. This means that in conceptual work, we don't have to unface the face in order to make a modification. We can do it right here. Let's take a look at some other things. So I've got a couple of patches here. A very nice feature of control point modification in unified modeling is the law control. So with law, you can choose to move one point or you can choose to move all of the points. And in between, you can vary it like so. There is a special one down here. Let me show it to you. So I'm going to move this patch here. Let's take a look. I'm going to pick this control point. Whoops. There we go. And slide it up like so. As soon as I let go, we get these handles here. Let me switch off the shading so you can see what's going on. There we go. All right. So these little handles will now allow me to dynamically change that modification down the U and the V directions. If they're a little bit short, like they are for me right now, you can make them longer so you can make the change a little more gently, a bit like a mouse warp. You see it's a little sensitive, so I make that longer. Makes it much easier to do. This gives me excellent control over the control points, and the mesh, or the polygon as I call it, is still very, very smooth without any bulging or strange wobbles. Okay, let's take a look at this one here. Another unified modeling function is rotate, one we've not really had before. So let me put this back to this mode. All right. So if I double click on rotate, I get a prompt to pick an axis. So I'm going to pick my corner control point there. And then I'm going to move a row. What I can do then is pick this row and rotate it around that axis. Just on its own, it doesn't make much sense. But if we use a law like this one, we can make it fan out like so. Also, something to point out, in classic ICEM Surf, extrapolate is used all the time. So it's quite annoying if you have to stop what you're doing because you didn't extrapolate something enough. In we can access extrapolation at any time you want. Okay, we have different types of extrapolation that you recognize. So the classic, like this, and the corner. So if you click right on the control point, I don't know if you know this, you can then do both at the same time, this extrapolation function. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So I'm skipping over the PowerPoint a little bit, so let me just get back to that for you, make sure I don't miss anything. Right, so with geometry creation. Okay, I think we've done these. I think I'll just stick with live ICEM Surf. It'll be easier for everybody. All right, moving on. So this is one of the great functions that we have in ICEM Surf, the ability to define topological constraints. As you know, ICEM is an explicit modeler. This means that there are no parametrics, there's no associativity. Well, in unified modeling, we can now define some persistent constraints in your geometry so that you can make these changes to your designs and maintain these relationships. Let me show you how you do that. So let's just take these patches. Okay. So just a simple set of patches here. The way you define these constraints is under the extended button. There's an extended button for each geometry family, you can see right here. Okay, so this is under the geometry extended one. I'm not going to go into every pick exactly, we don't really have enough time, but let me just show you how we can make a start. So the first one I want to define is here. So right now, if I make a modification to this geometry, let me shade it for you. All right, so let's see the control points and let's make that connection. So if I don't make the connection, that's what I wanted to show you first. This is what happens. So I'm going to choose normal, single, row. Here it is. And let's shade it too. All right, so as you would expect, these two surfaces come apart as soon as I make that modification. So what we can do is, if I specify a transition. So I'm going to say I'm going to generate a position constraint from here to here. And one thing I want to do is put on visible. So this little P appears between the two patches. This P stands for position. All right. So what this means is if I now pick this, the position constraint is maintained for the modification. Let's take a look on the other side. Let's do a more interesting one. Let's go for tangency. There we go. We now get a P and a T. You see how it works? It's P, T, and then you can have a C for curvature, and for torsion, we show a Y. I'm not sure why we show a Y, but we show a Y for torsion. I think it's because there's already been a T. So what happens here is, if I pick this control point row right here, see what happens? This is really useful. If you're struggling with a difficult geometry problem in a conceptual phase, you're trying to build a packaging model around some complex geometry, but you want to maintain the high quality connections around the outside, this will allow you to set up a nice model with nice connections, but allow you to make large modifications to it without having to spend a lot of time rematching all the time. So it's a very, very powerful tool indeed. So the other thing is under here, just to show you. So I mentioned curvature and torsion. We can do things like modify both. That means both sides will be modified with the constraint. We can specify certain diagnostics if we wish. And we can also make, this is where you can specify symmetric modeling. These are more advanced techniques. I'm not going to go into these today. But I hope that this will inspire you to have a little play with unified modeling moving forward, so you can explore these by yourself, or certainly ask questions from your ICEM support team. All right, let's move on to the next part. Volume modeling. So I have on my screen here an STL. So I'm going to start unified modeling. I'm going to choose the scan as my geometry. Remember, with you can make modifications to any type of geometry in ICEM Surf: scan data, points, raw data, patches, and curves. It can be anything at all. And you can make those modifications using geometry of any kind as well. So we can really mix and match what you're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and start my volume modeling. What happens here is ICEM Surf makes this box for me automatically. Okay, so this made a box of order 2 by 2. So this is what I call, or what we call, reference geometry. All right. So what we can now do is we can modify. We can modify that reference geometry like so. Not much happening there. Let me undo that. Let's try pulling this out in my direction. It takes a moment to initialize the change. There we go. So this is a very simple box. So what we can actually do is we can make it a little more complex. I can make it just by, on the keypad, make it order 3 by 3. Let's say tangent. And then using the preview, that's a bad choice. There we go. Let's try here. I'm afraid it's not quite working properly for me here. No, okay, so volume modeling is not working for me today. So let's move on. Okay, wow, the lighting's a little bright. Let's turn this down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we're now moving into what we call the reference modeling type. So under here, you'll see this is the middle row of family. So this, what we can do, you can model directly on the geometry, or like in feature design in classic ICEM Surf, you can model on reference geometry, and those modifications will then be applied to your actual geometry. So I mentioned before that any geometry can be used for modification, but any geometry can also be used as reference geometry. Okay, just like in geometry family, you have its own display state for reference objects right here, and its own extended menu for different functions. And you also have the ability to create geometry just like you can ordinary geometry. So for instance, I can create a curve right here, like so. And that's my reference geometry. And then I can modify the curve Okay. Oh, I think I know what I'm doing here. There we go. I had some of these set up for a different demonstration. Still struggling. Okay, let's go to the next list. So what I want to do here is I want to make a modification to the pink geometry by making that modification to the blue geometry. So I'm going to identify this. I'm going to use the M shortcut for material to pick my geometry. And then I'm going to use, for my reference, I'm going to pick this patch right here. Okay, so what I can do is, if I pick up on my reference geometry right here, let's make it, there we go. So this is order 2 by 2. So let's make it something a little more interesting. There's an order 3. Now you see what's going on here. There's something strange happening with my geometry, but that's okay. I understand what it is. It's because the geometry I'm modifying doesn't have the correct order to cope with this modification. So we need to take a look at another one of the contextual menus. We need to control the order. So what I'm going to do is right click here on the face, and I'm going to specify an order. And here we get 4 choices. I'm going to say a minimum order of 4, please. Okay, and I'm going to do the same over here on the patch. There we go. So this means that when I reactivate my reference geometry, the changes I'm asking it to make will be okay. There we go. You see the difference. So that's all very well. Not so different from classic ICEM Surf, but let me show you something else that we can do here. So I'm going to undo these changes, and let's go to the next list. All right, I'm going to specify a new reference geometry. I'm going to use 2 patches. Actually, let me just go back a little more. There we go. That's what I wanted. So you see my geometry is still selected in yellow. I'm now going to choose my reference, and rather than picking 1 reference, I'm going to pick 2. There we go. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to be able to control exactly where this edge is going. Okay, so I've now specified 2 patches. And what I'm going to do is make a modification to just one of the reference patches, but I'm going to define, let me see, let's just see how this goes. There we go, oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, no. Oh, I did the undo, didn't I? Yes, of course. I need to redo that. There we go. So put my reference back on, and so the minute you see it's pulling it apart, but what I can do is under the reference extended menu, I can define a topology. Okay, so what I want to specify here is I'm going to go from here to here with a PL. PL means linear, so we have a linear tangency constraint. So I can switch that down, and now let's see what happens. Whoops. There we go. Ooh. Okay, that's not quite what I was expecting to see. Okay, I think I have one of my settings incorrect here. Oops. No. Okay. All right, I'm going to leave that one here. Let's take a look at feature design. Okay, so feature design, as you know, it's in classic ICEM Surf comes with master. It works in a similar way in unified modeling, but there are some small differences. So first of all, I'm going to define my geometry. I'm going to pick this surface right here. Okay, there it is. And my reference, oops, here it is. Okay, I didn't press OK. My reference geometry is going to be these patches that you see underneath. The idea is this might be some standard geometry that we spend a little time working on, and we want to reuse this somewhere else in the model. So it's a classic situation. So I'm now going to specify my reference geometry, and I'm going to pick these patches underneath. There they are. Okay. So now I have my reference line activated. I can go ahead and choose feature design. Now in classic ICEM Surf, you only have one reference and one modified reference surface. In unified modeling, we can have more than that. So the way that it works is you pick the first one and then the one it refers to in 3 steps. There we are. Okay, so with that picked, I just hit the OK right here, and it translates across. I think I'm just going to restart my ICEM Surf, so just bear with me just a second. Pardon me, everyone. So I'm using ICEM Surf 2017.2. And I'll be back up in a moment. Okay. No, that's not what I wanted. All righty. So here we go again. Let me change that lighting. It's a little bit extreme again. All right. So geometry, I'm going to pick this surface here. All right. My reference. Okay. And we go for the feature design function. I'm going to switch on alignment this time. Let's see what happens. So from here to here, from here to here, and from here to here. Okay, let me just check here.
Alexander just gave us the hint that order is 2 to 2.
I see. So I need to increase the order. Right. Let's see if that makes a difference. Whoops.
And projection is why this is wrong.
Oh my goodness. Look at that. I'm sorry, everybody. This is the benefit of a live demo.
Projection and why could be a problem.
Yeah. So, but I'm not using a proj base right now. So I'm a little confused. Oh, I see. Projection in Y. How did that get switched on? Alrighty, let's see if this helps the situation a little bit. There we go. Oof. Yeah, I didn't notice that I had projection switched on. Apologies for that. So what's happened here is ICEM Surf has cleverly translated and rotated the geometry from its original place to its modified reference. So this is incredibly useful when you have a complex shape, which perhaps refers to a specific tooling direction. So one of the options that we can do in feature design is maintaining that tooling direction as you go around. It's one of the settings we can change here. So, okay, I think it's best if I just move on. So we're going to go and take a look at ProjBase, the next family. Here we go. All right. So what we have here is a selection of patches and a curve just above it. So I'm going to go ahead and define my ProjBase with these patches underneath. Here we go. So I'm not going to use a reference this time, and my geometry is going to be this curve. There it is. Okay. So if we look under here, I'm going to choose my projection direction for Z. There we go. And then as soon as I touch on this curve right here, it's going to project down onto the geometry. Now, the interesting thing about this is it's not a projection as in classic ICEM Surf, because normally it would split the curve at the breaks. Okay, so this is very convenient for us because it's maintaining just this one simple single object. So it's very easy for us to make a modification to the geometry. So what's happening here is the geometry is actually being magnetized onto these surfaces, if you like. All right, so this allows us to slide the geometry over the ProjBase. So how close is it to the ProjBase? Well, built right into unified modeling over here, you can see we have some diagnostics. So we can specify what is the distance. Okay, you can see it's about 1 millimeter, 1.1 millimeters off. You can change the count if you need to, or we can specify a grid, and you get this nice color plot to give you an idea of where it is. And because this is projecting in real time, what we can do is we can change the order of the curve, and you'll see the diagnostic updating. So I take it to an order 5 or then to an order 6, and you can see that it's fitting to the patches much better. Okay. All right. So again, the lighting looks a little strange. So I've been having some fun today, haven't I? Let me change the colors to make it a little more visible for you. Whoops. That's better. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of the other special functions that we can do with ProjBase and scan data. So our job here is to very quickly create a patch that will fit in this window area right here, okay? Now, we don't want to do it the classic way. We're going to do it in the fast unified modeling way. So we're going to make a start. I'm going to specify my ProjBase as the scan data, okay? I maybe need to change that. You might not be able to see it so clearly. A little brighter. Okay. So we're only interested in the window area. So what I'm going to do is define what we call a scan region. There we go. So a scan region, we've got different ways of defining it. What I mean by that is we can divide up scan data to just look at or just focus upon the area of interest. Okay, so we've got a nice selection of tools for doing that. Today I'm going to use here the flat region. Okay, so I'm going to specify a max angle of 3 degrees. What this means is if I just kick it off and click here in the window, ICEM Surf is in an intelligent way spreading out from where I clicked to analyze the surface normals between the neighbors of the triangles. So if I set it to 3, it's just going to spread out in a very convenient way, choose surfaces or facets which have a similar curvature. So it's just gone up to the edge of the window here for me in a very convenient way. All right, so with that active, I can now think about creating some geometry. So I'm going to go right ahead and push the create button. So when I'm creating geometry, a few things to bear in mind. Down here, you can define the order, because on the left side, we can create curve-based things, and on the right side, surface-based things, okay? This is also the duplicate button. I'll draw your attention to that. There's some other options as well under here that we can, for more advanced users. But I'm going to use this button, the scan region button. So I'm going to hit that straight away. And in just one click, ICEM Surf has very helpfully placed this order 4x4 patch onto just the scan region. You'll notice it's ignored everything else, okay? Let's see how good it did. So under diagnosis, we can take a look at the grid here. Oh, let me switch off the scan region shading so you can see what's going on. All right. So you get this nice color shaded plot of how close we are to the data. And I'm pretty happy with that. It looks like a nice clean surface, and for the job that we have to do today, it's perfectly good enough. So I'm just going to switch off my proj base for a moment, and I'm going to make a modification. I want to make this a little bit bigger, because what I'm going to do is create some curves from the scan data to define the shape for a facing operation. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to extrapolate a little bit. You see I've switched off the proj base. This is something that you can do in as you work. You can activate or deactivate the different families. This gives you excellent control over, over how you're working. So I'm going to go for here. Oh, it's just an extrapolate. So I'm going to, yep, there we go. By the way, if you wanted to do a specific distance, we can issue the delta command right here. So that's set to 10 mil. So that's it's just like delta in classic ICEM Surf. And here's mouse swap underneath. So it works in exactly the same way. Okay. So how am I going to create these curves to define this shape? Well, I'm going to use a useful function called feature line detection. This is a very handy tool for examining scan data. Typically, you might need help to finding a sharp radius or a rapid change of curvature or a sharp edge. In this case, it's very simple for me. I just want to see, I'm going to get the system to choose the edges for me. At this stage, you can see there's a save button. So if I wanted to, I could press save, and ICEM Surf would then create a raw data string or a contour that would sit on top of the edge of this. And we could use that for other things. But what I'm going to do right away, I'm going to use this as my proj base. So if I jump into geometry creation, I'm going to specify curve. We're going to do a few different ones. So let's see, I'm going to start with an order 2, go for a curve. And I'm going to define the curve across the bottom here. So I'm using the V shortcut for scan. So I'm going to pick here, and I'm going to pick it over here. All right. Now, it's a straight line. Of course it is. It's an order 2. So you can see it doesn't fit terribly well. So what I can do, before I press OK, I can change the order. I can make it an order 3 and just watch. Did you see how it just jumped on there? If I just, well, it just jumped on top. So what I can do, I can still pull these around, and ICEM Surf is projecting the curve onto the edge of the scan region. As soon as I say OK, it creates my order 3 curve. There's another way of defining a curve with like a sketch or painting function. So if we take a look at this A pillar right here, I can choose to, basically you can highlight or paint upon the parts that you're interested in, because you see it's a bit jiggy-jaggy here. It's not very clean. So I'm just going to pick on the clean areas, and I'm going to ask the system just to put a curve through just the clean parts. There we go. Something like that. And to do this step, I'm going to create multiple curves in one go. I'm going to use this option right here. And again, using the V shortcut, I'm going to specify 4 points. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. Now you can see the P has appeared again to show me that there's a position constraint exists across these curves. You can see I can still slide them around to get a good fit. Now what I want to do, I'm going to put this up to order 4 and see what happened. The T's appeared. That's because it's specifying a tangency constraint now. It's sort of like a fillet in this area. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to accept that. And there, it's made some curves for me. All right, so these curves I'm going to use for a facing operation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extrapolate them a little bit. Okay, and down here as well. All right. Oh, and this one too. Okay, and now I can use these curves for a facing operation. So I can right click and choose face. And then I just pick the curves I want to use. And there we go, and there we have it. So just in a few simple steps, I've very rapidly created a surface or a face very, very close to the scan data, so simply. So it's really, really useful for this rapid capture of the scan shape. Okay, so the next step, we're also looking at scan regions a little bit. This is just a simple example. So again, we have some scan data. I'm going to go into Unified Modeling, choose my proj base. So what we're doing here is we want to fit a surface to the top of the scan data here, but you can see very clearly that we have a feature running across the top. So we need to ignore this feature. So scan region is very helpful for doing this sort of operation. Let me put on, I have some sections here, okay. I've just changed my sections to say color on scans so they show up as blue, so you can tell them different from the patch. Okay, all right, so go into the extended menu. Let me change my projection direction to Z. Okay, so for scan region, I'm going to use flat region again, and this time I'm going to use a bigger number, 10, and pick out these areas. There we go. I don't care about that little hole, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to switch off the shading. So you see, this is my scan region. And like we did before, I'm just going to use the scan region button. So I'm going to choose order 4 by 4, one click, and it's done. So you can see it's not exactly perfect, so maybe we need to increase the order a little bit or model it a smidge. Let's increase the order a little. So I'm using the keyboard shortcuts, pressing 6, so I have an order 6 in both directions. Let's put on the diagnostics. There we go, 0.3, not too bad. Okay, so that shows you the power of a simple command like scan region for capturing your geometry. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 different families. We talked about some of these functions underneath, feature design and volume modeling. I'm not going to show you crown and move just yet. It works in a similar way to classic that you know. But what I want to do next is show you what happens when you mix all 3 families together in a combo, if you like. All right, so here we go. Here's a combo. This is an example of a nice little detail. It looks like a dinner plate to me. But what we need to do is, I want to show you how we can model that using all 3 families of unified modeling. So my geometry is going to be this surface under here. So I'm using my F shortcut to pick that. Okay. Now I don't want to see all those control points, so I'm going to use the specific display state just to simplify it a little bit. Okay, that's fine. Now I'm going to use for reference, I'm going to pick up this patch right here. Okay. Notice how it's possible to have wireframe for reference, but shaded for geometry. Very useful. All right. So if I'm going to model this right away, we can just work on the reference patch. So I'm going to specify something like this here. All right. All right, so I can pick on this control point and then, whoops, did I not pick everything? Let's go for normal. So here, this is in, although we're not using ProjBase right now, let's see. Perhaps we'll do it like this. I wonder if I have 2 surfaces in here. Just give me a second to check that. Yes. Okay. So there's my surface. Here's my reference. Okay. That's fine. Let's make a modification. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. All right, so I can pick on row and we do something like this, and we can use rotate. If I double click, we can then define on here on the corner point, rotate it around, maybe do it like this. I really appreciate how you can chop and change your laws and all your options right in the middle of the commands without having to stop and start and go and reselect and so on. So if I pick this here, I'll put it over, maybe position it down here. Now, that's great. However, take a look. I didn't assign the ProjBase. Okay, so a little contrived demo there, but what we can do is use the undo and go back and combine it with ProjBase as well and show you the unique benefits of unified modeling. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to define the ProjBase. The projection direction is normal. So just take a moment to think about what we're doing here. We have some geometry in the family. Sorry, in the geometry family. This is the geometry we're ultimately going to modify. We have some geometry in the reference family. This is the geometry that we're going to model to apply those changes to the to our target geometry. But on top of that, we're also going to project continuously the reference patch onto a proj base. So it's quite an incredible operation when you combine the three together. So what I can do is, just using this law, using a row, I can pick this, and like a magic carpet, I can pull it across like so, and we take a look, and you'll see that it is it's actually rotated our geometry around the model for us. Very, very powerful modification, made easy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more example using a combination of the three different families, and then we can take some questions. Okay, so let's take a look. So this is perhaps a more relevant example. So we have a door handle here, and what I want to do is, it's in the wrong place, or the geometry is all nicely defined, but yeah, we need to put it somewhere else on the vehicle. So from the top, so I'm going to pick my geometry, and it's I'm going to use the table command right here to pick the handle. Oops, not that, the handle and the door. For my reference geometry, I'm going to pick this red patch right here. And for my proj base, I'm going to pick this orange surface, like so. Okay, and one more thing we need to do here, because what we actually have, if I shade the model, you can see this is a face here with a fillet assigned. So what we can also do, like we did in the earlier example, is we can pick up on the face edges. So I'm going to deactivate proj base and reference just for a moment. And then if I right click on the background, you'll see this base patch, but here is edge. So I'm going to pick on my edge. So now the face edges are now a part of my geometry to be modified. So if we switch everything back on again, so let me check my normal projection, just check my options on my reference options or what I wanted as well. Okay. Switch off translate. Translate means that anything outside the reference patch will also move. So I don't want that. I want this to move inside. So I can then go into modification, and let's pick this up and move it across. There we go. So a very powerful thing indeed. We are in real time projecting this complex geometry with all these fillets and refacing the base patch all at the same time. And you can see all the display here of the connections between the surfaces are being maintained. Naturally, that is dependent upon the order of your patches. Like before, you saw I made a mistake when I didn't raise the order enough. So your geometry has to be able to accept the change. Of course it does. But if you set it up correctly, it's a very, very powerful combination. So I think that concludes the end of my overview of unified modeling. It was a little bumpy in the middle, apologies for that. I think it is a good idea to show the software working live. Videos which are carefully prepared are very nice, but at least if you see the software working in a real way, you get a real appreciation for how it's working. So, Honorata.
Thank you. So if you like to ask questions, go ahead, raise a hand, or write them into the question window. In between, while we are waiting for any questions to come, I would like to give you some information. We are having a lot of webinars this year. Actually, 6 topics are covered. 3 for ICEM Surf. We had the update on 2018 release in May, now this unified modeling, and we will have one webinar for safety analysis in September, and also on CATIA creative design topics. So if you are a designer and interested in those, you will find them on our 3ds.com page under events and e-seminars. They are announced there. And all webinars that you've missed are also there on as webinars on demand for you to rewatch. Also, I would like to inform you that we will have a user meeting conference, not only for CATIA design and ICEM topics, but it is going to be a huge event, a cross-brand event for all our brands under one roof in December in Hanau. And this will be also announced on our 3ds.com pages by the end of this month. So now I'm getting a lot of questions. I'm going to read them to you, Nick.
Okay.
When did you make a webinar for ICEM Inside 3D Experience in CATIA? I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Just give me a second. François, maybe you can explain a little more to this question. Then we have, why did not define any matching constraints during our last example? From Ishan.
Well, I didn't need to. The matching constraints, they maintain what you have already. So in that last example, the surfaces were already nicely matched, so there was no need. The matching constraints in unified modeling are more of an aid to conceptual modeling. So if you know that you want to have a tangency connection or a curvature continuity connection, you can define that before you start your modifications. This was more, with the changes I made here, there was no need to do that. So that's why I didn't.
Okay, I hope this answers your question, Ishan. For Jakub, I will cut this video and you will get the link to it tomorrow afternoon. From Michael Walanek, is it better to use unified modeling for class R modeling? Because I see much more benefit from this comparing to classic ICEM Surf.
Well, that's a very good question. And the beauty of it is that you can use both. You don't have to use one or the other. You can use unified modeling when it's appropriate. So in a typical studio, I found that is used more upfront for conceptual problem solving, and then classical ICEM Surf is used for the final tweaks and modifications for the finished quality. So you don't have to decide. It's one or the other. They work perfectly well together. So we offer you both choices.
Okay, François, back to your question. You are talking about ICEM shape design. I had a webinar last year with an overview for that one, which you can find as a webinar on demand as well on 3ds.com under events and e-seminars. And we will probably do something for ICEM shape design at the beginning of next year, because for now we are quite heavily booked with lots of webinars, so I won't get it into the calendar anymore for this year. And if you are talking about the new ICEM software to come in the 3D Experience platform, this will be GA next year, and so we will do a webinar for it next year as well. Okay. Adam, you can speak now.
Hello.
If you like.
Hello, Adam.
Yep. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you fine.
Excellent. Yeah, it was just when you were using the projection onto a surface, you had an example where the curve, it was almost like set above the surface, and you chose a projection base, and it was where you had multiple patches.
Yes,
and
that's right.
You projected instead, and it dropped the curve down, and you increase the order. I've used that. Yeah, that's the example. I've used that myself as well a couple of times. Is there a way of getting that to project without? Because you're almost in sort of curve manipulation mode, and then as soon as you hit that, you kind of move it anyway. So if, like, before it projects, as soon as you touch it, so you pick one of the control points and you're already in modification mode, there's a chance sometimes. I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is, can it project without moving it?
Yes. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Nice to hear from you, by the way, Adam. Yeah, Adam and I used to work together a long time ago. So what you can do is, hang on, let's get this right. Here we go. So I'm defining my project base. You can activate the sort of the projection. Let's get the direction right this time. That's it. By just pressing the OK on the projection menu. So if you choose your options, there's nothing much here. If I just press OK,
it drops it.
Yeah, it just drops it.
Okay.
So if we just look at it in top view, I don't know. There we go. So that's in top view.
Yeah.
So no, you don't. You can just press OK. You can also just change the order as well.
So can you have the curve? Can you have that? Leave that curve where it is, and have a live projected curve underneath it. So you're modifying the curve that's sitting on a plane above the surface, and the curve, projected curve, mirrors what's happening to the modified curve on a plane.
Oh, mirrors sort of in a live kind of associative.
Yeah. So you keep your modified curve above, and you can control that, and it's being sort of projected down onto a curve on surface.
No, I understand. No.
Okay.
That's a sort of in getting into ICEM realm, if you like. To get that sort of thing working, what you would probably do is you'd project the surface, like a world surface, and have an SSI or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, nothing that clever. What I would do, you do have this duplicate button right here, and what this does is it makes a copy of your geometry, but leaves it out of the selection. So if I now go into here and press OK, you see it's left an original.
Okay.
But I know that's not quite what you meant.
Yeah.
But
okay.
That's as close as we can get.
No problem.
Okay.
Thanks for the answer.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay, we have a lot more. So the next one would be Takur Alok. I hope I pronounce your name correct. Let me. Oh, I can't unmute you. Maybe you can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Hi, Nick.
Hello.
Hi, Nick. Hello from Australia.
Oh,
wow.
Nick, in that last example that you showed with all the three options, you selected the door surface along with the handle surface. But when you move the reference patch, only the handle moves.
Yes.
And the door stays where it is.
Yes.
Why doesn't the door surface move?
It's to do with one of those options that you have underneath the reference here. So under the reference extended, you've got different things. And you might have noticed that before I started, I switched off translate. So if this is on, any geometry outside of the reference patch will just translate along with it. Because I had a small reference patch, but a large amount of geometry, you can choose to have any surfaces outside of the reference patch projected area just translate, okay? But if you switch off translate, if anything is outside of the reference patch, it won't be affected. That's basically how that works. I can just try to demonstrate.
Thanks.
So, oh, you're welcome. But
yeah, no, I got it. Just one more thing to what Adam was asking. So just like when you copied that curve, and then the curve which is inside unified modeling got projected onto the surface. Can you then go back into unified, like bring that the other copied curve into reference modeling, and then use it as a reference curve, and then move that to move the projected curve?
That's a good question. I think in that instance, when you, I think normally it projects the reference onto the proj base. So in that case, you're wanting to modify, you're wanting to have the non-projected curve as a reference and the projected curve as the target. I think that's what you're saying there. Now, there are lots of options under there. Things like this, you can choose what is projected. So here, if I switch off reference, the geometry will be projected, but I've actually never tried it in combination with reference as well. So I'm not sure. It's something I'd have to try, or you could try.
Maybe we can answer this later. We have some specialists in this webinar, so you can repeat your question in an email to me and I will forward it again. Okay, then Rajendra.
I have some. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Rajendra.
Hello. Yeah. I have some question about the box. I think we missed out previously. If you see that you are having the scan data of front of the car, you make a box and you try to make some changes.
Yes.
Can you? Yeah. Is it possible to see it again? I have two questions, and this is the first question. Yeah.
Volume
please.
modeling. You're talking.
Yeah. Volume modeling. Yeah.
So go ahead. What's your question? Okay, there's the box. And yeah, what did you want to know?
That I just want to know that if we change the box and how this whole front scan or any object can be changed with reference to this. Okay, is it something like we can change it into the Maya? Because Maya, they also have some type of boxes and they make some rows, add some rows, and they change and the things change. Is it similar way, or it's a little bit different?
Well, Raj, I'm not a Maya expert by any means. This is a very global tweaking type modification. I think if you wanted to do more delicate controls, you might be better off using more carefully defined reference geometry. What I can do here is you can make the box. This is designed to be a very quick, rapid overall modification. Remember, we can modify any geometry. It doesn't have to be scan data. It could be curves and so on. So you can make them in the same way that I can modify any reference patch with this classic directions like normal and tangents and vector and so on. I can apply those modifications to the box, and it will modify the geometry in the same way. Here I've locked down Z and Y, Z and Y, and I go for the control point row here, and I can pick that. Let's go for, there we go. Yeah, so something like this. We can go for a single one. Yeah. So you can make, it's a very loose and quick and easy modification. So I wouldn't compare it directly with Maya modification, but it's more for general tweaks and changes.
Yeah. I have a second question that you showed the scan data, which was having a simple scan. In between, we have a fillet, and you selected the scan region, and you quickly make a scan surface using the scan region for one particular surface. Yeah, this exactly. Yeah. And the top surface you can make, then this also you can make. I have just a simple question. Is it possible to get the scan exercise, surface to surface intersection line, also here with the unified modeling directly with the direct assumption?
Do you mean where this feature?
Not here. If you just go, so yeah, here, yeah, the big fillet. If
Oh,
you
the
see
big
the
fillet.
big fillet, yeah, this is a big fillet. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't quite get you, but what maybe this is what you mean. So we can look at a curvature. This is a
Yeah.
tool that we can use to find where. I should perhaps reset that. Let's do it again up here. So you can use this tool to help you define where the fillets should start and finish based on curvature diagnostic. So you have this slider that you can use to help you figure out where to put the curves. So these orange lines, remember when I put the window in the side of the car? The orange lines are like a magnetic line. So when they're active, I can then create a curve on top of them. So I choose my order, like an order 3, and then because we're on scan, I mean, the sketch would probably be better in this instance, but I can just go, just change to a Y direction and just go V to V, and something like that. That's not quite what I wanted, but it's as we've seen. There we go. I tell you what, let's make it order 2 and 3 again. Oh, I'm in the wrong direction, of course. That's not going to help me. There we go. That's what I wanted. So that's what it's designed for. So if you have a complicated scan with lots of feature lines, it's to be a user aid for you. So does that answer your question?
Not, but it's okay. I think we can use this and try to get a quick, good surface-to-surface interaction line using that, because anyway, when we go for the classes surfacing, we start with the good SSI, surface-to-surface interaction line, to make the surfaces first.
Yeah, the
so
SSI.
I think, yeah, we can try with this also. Yeah, okay.
Oh, you're talking about defining a theoretical? Where as if the fillet wasn't there. Oh, right. Okay. Well, what I would do in that case is I would repeat what I did before, create a surface on the top and on the side, and then use the extrapolate function, and then I would make a curve on the SSI in a kind of a classical way, but it would be accelerated with unified modeling, because you wouldn't have to keep stopping and starting.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
I think these all exercises are quite helpful for us, particularly into the quick developments and concept things.
Exactly.
Also into the cluster developments. That is also very good, actually.
Thank you. Yes, it's a little known. Well, a lot of people know about it, but not many people use it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to switch to the next question. We would need the door handle again for this, Nick, and here I have a couple of questions. Like a last example of moving door handle pocket on a skin: is the mating fillet deformed in character?
I guess they're referring to the fillet around the depression. It will change a little bit. Like I said before in the example, the data, you do need to be careful that you have the right order in your patches for making these changes. I would say that it's a first step, and what you need to do for final quality, you should go back and check that it's okay. But in principle, it shouldn't change. In principle, the control points should maintain exactly the same relationship with their neighbor, just like in classic global modeling and feature design. But it's always good practice to go back and check. So that would be my advice. Is the character of the fillet changed? In principle, no, but you should check.
Does that answer your question, Paul? You're unmuted if you want to add something. But you're probably not on the phone. Okay, then the next question, just give me a second. Can we do volume modeling on surfaces while maintaining continuities? And also, can we do the last, that's the door example, so yes.
Yes, you can. You can define the constraints across the geometries and then use volume modeling on them, yes.
And Adam is asking if it is possible to get a copy of the ICEM file that you used in this webinar to play around.
I'm sure we can sort something out, Adam.
Please, Adam, send me an email and or Nick directly. Any more questions? Takur, you can speak now.
Yeah, hi Nick. I was
Hi.
fascinated by the rotation function that you used on the CVs, because I always missed that. In ICEM Surf, I never knew it's there, so it's something new that I learned today. Could you show me the rotation?
Sure.
How you did that, because I think I missed some of the frames on the live telecast.
Okay. Although just one thing, I don't know if you've noticed, but
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So what happened is I'm now projecting the geometry, not the reference. So I swapped that around. So I'm pleased about that. That's in the ICEM Surf help files. You'll see there's an awful lot of information about what's going on under here. I mean, this is where I made my mistake earlier. I had it set onto. I had one of the settings incorrectly set, so it's easily done. So to answer your current question, so something like here. All right. So this doesn't exist in classic ICEM. This only exists in unified modeling, the rotation function. So if I switch off and put on your control points, all right. So if we go to the modification tab, the rotation is here. So if you double click, you get your vector selection. So you can put it wherever you like. So let's put it here or here even. There we go. So that's my axis of rotation. Then you choose single point or row or cell or this is auto. So if I pick kind of here, this one, for instance, let's say like this, you see how it rotates around? Okay, so this is not a great example on a single point. It works much better like this. So there it's rotating. But then when you combine it with this law, like this is quite a nice one. That's like sort of a, there we go. It helps you to maintain a nice polygon distribution. I've messed it up now, but I'm sure you get the idea. So yeah, it's really useful. So there it is. It's rotate.
Does that answer your question, Takur?
Yeah, it does. And this feature is there in only the latest version of ICEM, or was it there before? I somehow missed it.
It's been there at least until from 4.13. So it probably goes back further. If anybody on the call knows when rotate appeared in unified modeling, please speak up. I guess not.
From the beginning, so, yeah, Alexander is saying.
Is that Alexander back?
Yes. I can unmute him. Yeah, go ahead. Alexander, hello. You can speak now.
Hello, Nick and all. I don't know if my micro works.
Does it work? Perfectly fine.
Okay, yes. What I can mention is this rotate feature did exist from the beginning, from the very first moment when unified modeling was introduced, if I am correct.
So 4.2, is that?
This I don't know exactly.
Okay, well, I think that's more or less when unified modeling started, but I don't know. Yeah, long time.
Yeah.
All right, so if there are no more questions, I would like to end this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, for almost 1.5 hours, and even from Australia. Very nice to have you here. And you will get the link to the recording tomorrow afternoon. I will hurry up. So I wish you all a good afternoon, good night, good morning, and I hope to hear you soon in the next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.